I also grew up in a family where my older sisters were active politically already from a young age. And so I just naturally fell into political organizations, anti-apartheid activities. And, when we started the youth movement in our area for the first time, it sounds really strange, but we couldn't get 12 people to form an actual branch, which was the number you needed. And you could have a quorum of 8 people and have an interim branch. And so I ended up having to go to the branch meetings. I think I may have been 11 or 12 because my sisters needed a quorum. And so that's how I kind of fell into politics, albeit that it was probably going to be a natural progression into, anti-apartheid activism. And then, of course, look, there was some kind of scary bits to being a political activist, but there was also a lot of fun. So my sisters, we'd go to a Goombas in Cape Town at a place called Cape Arts Project. And a Goomba is essentially where we play kind of, resistance music, but popular music, and everybody dances. But it was really interesting because that's where you could see a non-racial environment. It was always mixed. It was always comfortable. It was always equal. And so so those were some of the things, right? And then also the way that at that time the youth leadership understood, in order to reach the youth, you need to go to where they are, or you need to be in their own mindsets, right? We had a lot of games evenings. We had Bryce at Sunflay, at other places. We would just take a train ride to the beach and so on. And so there was really like, you didn't feel burdened by being in the struggle at such a young age. And so being a young person, it didn't feel burdensome being in the struggle. It just felt right. We were taught about Lenin, Marx, Gramsci. We were taught about, basic skills, which I thought was actually really great. And it's taught me throughout my life how to manage these things. We were taught how to chair meetings, how to take minutes, how to report back, how to summarize a discussion, and those kinds of things. We were taught about the labor movement, the history of our struggle, the history of our leaders, what we stand for as an organization. We understood the nature of our struggle. So we called, or we referred to apartheid as colonialism of a special type, where you had the colonizers in the country, living in the country. They had become part of the country. There was the funeral of the Gooks 6 or Gooks 8. I think it was the Gooks 6. They were ambushed and they were killed. And all of us went into the townships to sleep there so that we could attend the funeral in the morning. And everybody just slept in everyone's houses. People just opened their homes. And I remember being in a house, we were maybe 50 people. And the next day we went to the funeral, the police stopped us anyway. It was very difficult. All we wanted to do was go to the funeral. And in the end, I don't even think I got to the graveyard because it was just police everywhere. There was the funeral of Ashley Creel that was also quite significant for us. Again, the same thing happened. Where the police came, I was stopped. We were taken into a Casper. We were strip searched, but thank God I jumped into a car with some white comrades I didn't even know. And because of them, and like now today with the TRC, you hear all sorts of stories. I think the one that stood out, but I was not there, where there was a change, was the Trojan horse, which you people may have spoken to you about. And I think that's where people decided that this was just too much. At that time, COSAS was banned. And so we formed an organization called the Western Cape Students Congress. No council, because every time you set up an organization with the word Congress in, they banned it. So our comrade lawyers told us if we call it council, committee, coordinating forum, then they're not likely to ban it. So we called ourselves the Western Cape Students Council. And then because we thought we would get banned, we would have councils in every sub-region. And so I was the treasurer of Wexco at the time. We had a really good system where if you needed to go on the run, there were always houses. So we were always looking at people who were peripheral in terms of their contribution and involvement in the struggle. And then we formed a committee. And then after the committee, we've established the organization formally. I think I was the first treasurer. Okay. I'm almost certain I was, yes. And then after a while, I became an organizer. And so, yeah. And so, but for most of that time, look, you didn't really hold a treasurer role the way that you do today. You're almost always an organizer, coordinator kind of thing. But remember, at the same time, there was also still being involved in the youth. So I was still in the youth in my community. And that was evolved from CACO to SACO. So it was Cape Youth Congress, and then it became the South African Youth Congress. And eventually it became the ANC Youth League. A lot of our meetings ended up at UCT, which is a white campus at that time, right? Yes, it may have been racially mixed, but it was a white campus. And the reason we did our meetings at UCT was because it was safer. When we went to Bush or UWC, we knew we were going to protest or get arrested. And so we'd never have big meetings at UWC unless we were very kind of secretive about it. Johannesburg in particular was just a place where it was just happening. There was one very sad moment though, and a very sad period was when the IFP and the Nats started to attack people on the hostels. And in fact, one day I had just gotten, and I used to travel by taxi at the time, I just got into a taxi rank and they just mowed down people and I literally stepped over bodies. In terms of counseling, there was, but I think even then, things like counseling and therapy wasn't yet mature, the way that it is today. And so I do think that while there are people who went for counseling, perhaps a lot of people who still said after, we got freedom that they were suffering from PTSD